Expected points, clean sheet odds, and who is the best captain. This video has got all the information you need to know ahead of game week 1. Right, then we'll start by looking at the top players for expected points by position. The way I've done this is, if you remember, well, if you were a subscriber to me last season and knew how I frame these videos, I do a view showing the Drafthound expected points for goalkeepers for one game week and then the next 3. So for game week 1 in isolation, David Raya of Arsenal is the top goalkeeper. 3.4 expected points for him, followed by Vicario, Alisson, Nick Pope, Verbruggen, Onana, Sells, Henderson, Pickford and Flecken. So yeah, just interesting, I think, to look at who are the top projected keepers for game week 1. And over the next 3 game weeks, it's actually Ederson that just goes ahead, and that's due to the quality of his fixtures in game weeks 2 and 3. Raya is up there. I mean, the list is very similar to what we've just seen for the 1 game week, really, because ultimately, you know, there's only 20 goalkeepers to choose from, and most of them are going to be, most of the best ones are going to be there or thereabouts the top for most game weeks, right? But interestingly, what I've really liked from this graphic, they're predicting Sanchez to be the first choice Chelsea keeper at the moment, which probably back, but who knows who's going to be that first choice Chelsea keeper, right, with what we know at the moment. It does have Dean Henderson as the, well, joint top goalkeeper for expected points coming in at 4.5 million. Oh, no, I think in every single draft I've made so far, I've picked a 4.5 million goalkeeper, and I tend to most FPL seasons, unless I see like a premium goalkeeper that's been mispriced. I think Dean Henderson is the top 4.5 million keeper, but there is a little bit of doubt around Crystal Palace, and I'd say that's particularly around Mark Gahey, who looks like he could potentially be moving to Newcastle. I think if he does make that Newcastle move, he becomes, well, the Crystal Palace defence definitely becomes a bit weaker. But I still think Henderson's the best 4.5 million goalkeeper. And I look back to, you know, if you look back to all the top goalkeepers in FPL history, the ones that have scored the most points each season, they're usually goalkeepers that get an average amount of clean sheets, say 9 to, you know, between 9 and 13 clean sheets, say something like that. But they get saves bonus every game, and their points total is propped up by consistent saves and also, you know, the odd clean sheet here or there. And I think Dean Henderson ticks that box quite nicely. And I've got to say, I would genuinely back him to finish this season, provided he stays fit for all the games. I would genuinely back him this season to be one of the top scoring goalkeepers, if not the top scoring goalkeeper in the game. One or 2 other 4.5s might emerge, but right now, my money's on Henderson. Right then, on to the defenders, and for game week 1, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold as the number 1, 5.1 expected points. He's got a really nice fixture, Ipswich away. You know, Liverpool could well keep a clean sheet in that one, although I do have a sneak suspicion that Ipswich will manage to score a goal in that game, you know, being at their home ground. I just think they probably score against Liverpool there, but of course Trent, you know, we all know his attacking, you know, upside, the potential he has for attacking returns, and also Liverpool, right, they're not all that bad defensively, so a clean sheet against Ipswich is not out of the question. It's the same for Pedro Porro against Leicester, although I would put the Spurs clean sheet odds to be less than Liverpool, because I just think in general Spurs are not as good defensively as Liverpool. But when you look at the projected expected returns for defenders across the season, according to like bookmakers odds, etc., Porro and Trent are really close, and I think that's sort of backed up in the way they play, right? Porro is basically a right winger, and I've noticed that he's really good at cutting in on his left foot and shooting, which I think Trent can't actually do that. I don't think he has much of a left foot on him, so cutting inside and shooting is just not something he has in his game. So that's actually one little thing that Porro has over him. But Trent, he's got all the free kicks, creativity he gets in that Liverpool team, right? I just think he's going to be great. The one sort of question, though, I guess you can have over Trent, it's given, you know, England going to the final of the Euros, him getting back a bit late. Is he going to start game week 1? I think he probably does, but given how late he returned for the Euros, I think that's a question. Obviously, Ben White's going to play, didn't play in the Euros. 6.5 million, though, I think is a little bit expensive for him this season. I would probably pick Gabriel and Saliba instead, because across the season, I don't think their points totals, I say that, they were different last season, weren't they? But I just don't think like Saliba is going to massively underscore White to the point where you need to save 0.5 million. If Trippier plays, I think he does well, but that's a big if. It looks like he could be off to Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure that move's been entirely confirmed and nailed on yet, but Hall and Livramento seem to be playing most of the minutes during pre-season at the moment. Any other defenders to pick out? Obviously, all the other Liverpool ones, you know, Ipswich away is a good fixture for them. Guardiola's still up there, even though he's got Chelsea away. and Saliba and Shah to round off for just game week 1. Looking ahead to the first 3 then, we got Guardiola coming out on top. Similar story really to the goalkeepers. I think he's propped up by the fact he's got Ipswich and West Ham in game weeks 2 and 3 with much better clean sheet odds than I would say Liverpool have against Brentford and Man United. So yeah, interestingly, for the first 3 game weeks, Guardiola has better total expected points than Trent, although it's pretty close. There's only 1.1 in it. Trent's in second. Pedro Porro in third place. I really haven't considered Porro to be an option in my team, I've got to say, just because of how poor Spurs are defensively. Maybe I'm overlooking that, and ultimately, I do think Spurs will keep clean sheets at some point this season. And just with how attacking Porro is, to be honest, he's probably the best defender at that price point, right? When you look at all the other defenders on this list at 5.5 million, Ruben Diaz, Akanji, Walker, all those guys, you can't really back any of them to definitely play for Man City, whereas Porro, when he's fit, he's going to play it right back for Spurs, and he's got a heck of a lot of attacking upside. Spoke about those Man City defenders there. It was dominated basically by the best defences in the league, really, this list. There's no massive surprises, I would say. Walker, Akanji and Diaz are the ones that Drafthound are predicting to play most weeks, but we all know what pet roulette is like with that defence. You just don't know who's going to play a centre-back week on week. On to the midfielders, and you'll be massively shocked to see Mo Salah top of the list. I personally think Mo Salah is the best captain for game week 1. Well, actually, I've got a few expected points data sources for captaincy, which I'll get onto, but yeah, Drafthound have him at 7 expected points, followed by Son at 6.5. I'll talk a bit more about Solanke when I get to the forwards. Obviously, he's just signed for Spurs, so I would suggest potentially a question mark as to whether Solanke will take penalties off of Son. I don't think that will happen immediately, though. Son is the club captain for Spurs. I don't think there's any reason to take him off pens. I think it's just a matter of waiting, I guess, for Son to miss, and then question marks will be raised as to whether Solanke should take them. Odegaard is actually really liked by the Drafthound algorithms, and at 8.5 million, he's 1.5 million less than Saka and is predicted to get more points in game week 1. It's not actually that close, 0.7 more expected points. Palmer's up there, even though he's got Man City at home, he's 4th with 5.7. Foden, I'm not sure he's going to start against Chelsea. He's up there, though, on 5.6. And we've got Saka, 2 Spurs midfielders, and Johnson, who looks to have nailed down that right-hand side spot. I would say 6.5 million. There's slim pickings in terms of midfielders at that value that I'd actually want to pick. I guess Pedro Neto's now signed for Chelsea, so he could be an option. And Kunku's obviously that price as well. And Brennan Johnson here, who looks to be starting on the right for Spurs now. James Maddison, McAllister, not sure I'd go for McAllister, and Kevin De Bruyne are the top midfielders for game week 1. And then looking ahead to the next 3 game weeks, got Salah again top in the list. I mean, no real surprise to see him at the top, right? 20 expected points. I would say, although I don't think he's necessarily the best captain for game weeks 2 and 3, you could definitely get away with just putting the captain armband on him for the next 3 game weeks if you really wanted to. Cole Palmer in 2nd place. Foden in 3rd, although again, I'd go back to what I said when looking at those game week 1 points totals. You have to really ask the question as to whether Foden's going to play game week 1. Given what Pep said about like his late returning players from the Euros, it could well be the case that Foden doesn't actually play game week 1. So just one thing to bear in mind if you're thinking of picking him. Son's up there. I mean, the talisman for Spurs, going to be the penalty taker in my mind, on the pitch for 90 minutes every game. Got really decent first 3 fixtures, Leicester, Everton and Newcastle, and I don't know, I see that Newcastle Spurs game being a goal fest, to be honest. Odegaard and Saka. Odegaard is higher than Saka for the next 3 game weeks, which is really interesting. Just, yeah, something interesting I think that the Drafthound algorithms have produced. De Bruyne, Johnson, McAllister and Maddison, and then Harvey Barnes as well, interestingly. Do you think Harvey Barnes is going to start for Newcastle? I think if I were to pick a Newcastle midfielder, I'd go for Gordon, right? And also Murphy's been playing most of pre-season and looks to be in really good form as well. So, yeah, a bit of a doubt about that Harvey Barnes one. But I'd definitely say Newcastle mid should be on there. I'd probably give it to Anthony Gordon rather than Harvey Barnes. I mean, it's obviously no surprise to see Haaland towards the top of the forwards list, right? Gakpo in 2nd place. I mean, even though Haaland's got Chelsea away, I know I just spoke about Gakpo there. Even though he's got Chelsea away, he's still nearly 2 expected points higher than any other forward, according to at least the Drafthound algorithms. Gakpo is expected to start, I would say, against Ipswich, although I'm just not sure how that Liverpool front 3 is going to line up for that game, and I think you'd be a bit of a fool to predict it unless we get a leak ahead of the deadline, I guess. Maybe, you know, with a leak in Gakpo's confirmed to play, he could be a good option. Likewise, of course, Darwin Núñez. Havertz, I must say I've not really been all that keen on him, but he has had a really good pre-season for Arsenal, and he will be starting as number 9. So I do think he scores a good amount of goals this season. He just doesn't fill me with all that much excitement, considering some of the other forwards you could go for. I'm thinking like Haaland and Isak, for example, right? And another forward that hasn't actually made this list, because he's down as a non-starter for Bournemouth at the moment, because that's what he was looking like during this pre-season, is Solanke. He's just signed for Spurs. Like I said, I'd ask the question as to whether he takes pens off of Son. But he's a really good goal scorer, of course, is Solanke. And I think he'd be somewhere on this list now he's signed for Spurs. It's not quite updated yet on the Drafthound algorithms. I reckon he will be somewhere in between like 4 and 4.5 expected points. And then you can see the rest of the strikers here. Don't think there are any really to call out. Obviously, Isak, 55.2% owned. Everyone's got him in their teams. Watkins at 9 million. I haven't actually had him in a single one of my drafts so far. I think, well, bar Isak, he is. Let's just see what Salah's ownership is a second. So Salah's on 35.5. So yeah, Watkins is the second most popular player in FPL at the moment. And he's only got 3.8 expected points in game week 1. So just something to bear in mind. I would definitely say he becomes an option if he's confirmed to be the Villa penalty taker. But so far, we haven't seen him take one yet. And I think it could well go to John McGinn, given that he takes them internationally for Scotland. But yeah, just one thing to bear in mind with the forwards. And for the next 3 game weeks, the list isn't all that much different, really. And to be honest, there's never really going to be too much differentiation between the forwards, because ultimately there's only really 20 of them to really pick from. 20 first choice number 9s in the Premier League. So the list, isn't all that long. So I'll leave it on screen for a little bit. You can check it out for yourself. But according to Drafthound, at least, these are these are the top forwards for the next 3 game weeks. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at the top players for expected points through a load of different expected points metrics, or the ones that I like to rely on at least. So this is what Drafthound is saying. You've got Salah, Haaland, Son, Odegaard and Palmer as the top 5, with Salah emerging 0.5 points ahead of anyone else. That's quite tricky to say. So I think it's quite clear that, the Drafthound algo has Salah as the best captain. Also put in the FPL review captaincy algorithm. That's got Saka as number 1. I wasn't expecting it to be the case, particularly considering that the FPL review algorithm has Odegaard scoring more points than Saka. Just interesting to see how they work out. But yeah, FPL review currently has Saka as the number 1 player for game week 1. Isak in 2nd place, Salah in 3rd, Haaland in 4th, Odegaard. You can see the rest of them there, right? And the Fantasy Football Hub has Salah, Haaland, Saka, Isak, Son, Palmer. So the top 5, top 6 amongst these algorithms is roughly the same. It's just exactly how players are ordered. I would say given Fantasy Football Hub and Drafthound both have Salah at number 1, that's kind of a 2-to-1 outvoting, I would say. And ultimately, between Salah and Saka in FPL review, there's not a whole lot. So that would suggest to me, at least, the expected points are suggesting Salah is the best captain for game week 1. I think I'd agree with that. And finally, I just want to have a quick whiz on the clean sheet odds. So we got the only team that are more likely than not, according to the odds at least, which is obviously 50% or greater, is Arsenal. They got 55% chance of keeping a clean sheet against Wolves. We got Liverpool on 44, Newcastle on 42. Usually when I look through these lists, and I said this in videos that I made last season, I tend not to back teams with lower than 30% clean sheet odds. But looking at how few teams actually have greater than 30%, you're kind of going to have to delve into some of the lower teams to pick from. So I'd probably say this particular game week, I'd go 25% or above, just because, yeah, there's very low clean sheet odds across the board. And to be honest, it tends to be the case in the Premier League, at least through my observation, that more goals tend to happen at the start of the season. And then as teams' attacking structures, formations, tactics, etc. get worked out, there tends to be more clean sheets kept towards the end of the season. I think that also comes down to top teams nailing down their back fours, etc., and getting through injuries and rotations and what have you. So I'd expect probably more goals to come at the start of the season. And yeah, I mean, you can see the clean sheet odds there. All right, and that's the end of the video, revitalizing those weekly videos that I was doing all of last season. Because it's game week 1 coming up, I thought I'd make them all ready for it. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of some of those expected points totals. I think some of them might come across as a bit controversial, but I like using the Drafthound algorithm. It's helped me with expected points, captaincy decisions, transfers decisions in the past, so I want to stay loyal to it and use it in my videos. If you want to sign up to Drafthound, there is a link in the description below for you to do that. It's a very useful tool. Like I said, I use it in a lot of my videos and to help with my own FPL team, so I'd recommend it for you as well. Yeah, If you want to see more content from me, be sure to subscribe just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.